Glad to hear Snorri Græl's presentations. I'm probably going to repeat some of the things he mentioned. I'm going to dip into the realities of threats in terms of northbound cruise tourism in the Arctic, polar cruise tourism. And as we're all aware of, northbound cruise tourism has been on the rise and increased steadily since millennium. As one, and even in a longer time perspective, there's been some extreme growth rates observed. One recently graduated student from the University Center of Westfjords, Megan O'Brien, realized in her master thesis that cruise calls to Ísafjörður had increased by 2,000% since 1975 to 2013. That's something. And of course, some challenges follow along. We live in times of change. Climate related, which is one of the reasons why the Arctic becomes increasingly attractive for guests, but that also poses challenges even in the most strange manner. As the sinking of the Explorer in November 2007 of the Antarctic Peninsula illustrated, and the grounding of Ocean Nova that Snorri mentioned, with over 100 persons aboard in primo 2009, there are reasons for concerns associated with the enormous growth rates of polar tourism. Key stakeholders, including national program managers, tour operators, and tourists themselves, have to adapt to situations previously unheard of. In 2008, for example, a passenger who was booked on a cruise via the Northwest Passage from Alaska to the North Atlantic successfully sued the tour operator for a shortcoming of the journey and a broken promise of his trip. The brochure of the operator promised meter-thick pack ice. And during the journey, there was no meter-thick pack ice to be seen, attributed to the effects of climate change. And the court agreed that this was a shortcoming of the journey and a broken promise of the tour operator, despite the tour operator's brochure advising that schedules may have to be changed due to extreme weather. So these are maybe an illustration of how this all can have some strange effects as well on the tour operator. In contrast to not having enough ice, some incidences in recent years by the Antarctic where excursion vessels like Kapitan Klepnikov in 2009 and academic Sjokalski just 2 months ago were stuck in ice, have shown that while there was no obvious risk for an icebreaker like those, in such a situation there's concern about the increasing number of regular large cruise liners visiting the polar regions, as I think was eminent in Snorri Græl's visualizations of some of the larger cruise vessels visiting Ilulissat in Greenland. And those are not ice strengthened, as he mentioned. A potential rupture of the hull or even a sinking could result in the leaking of oil and other hazardous liquids, which would be a disaster for fragile polar environments. In this perspective, the safety perspective and the environmental perspective are interlinked. They're interconnected. They're almost the same issue. And in addition, a search and rescue mission to such remote areas in adverse weather conditions is very difficult at best. With a capacity of more than 3,500 passengers and crew on board, and often adverse weather condition, an aerial rescue mission, as we've heard from Snorri, is next to impossible. So the response capabilities are limited. Well, I've sort of gone into some of the direct incidences or casualties that have been occurring since 1995 for cruise ships in particular. And I'm going to go through with you the number and types of casualties, where and by whom, and then I'm just going to try to phrase some different challenges, what to expect, and maybe in the end address what are the major issues for the relevant authorities. I'm not sure I'll get that in time, but let's try it. The picture up in the right corner is a picture from a rescue operation where Alexei Mariskov, this is a converted icebreaker that was cruising off Svalbard in November 2007, unfortunately was looking at Hornbreen Glacier, and unfortunately the glacier calved. This is one type of maybe not so common incidences, but it does address the problem that in some instances the cruise liners are sailing too close to potential threats like calving glaciers, but also rocks, and I think that is a more common cause of problem. This list that I've collected from June 1995 to 2009 and is can be seen in a book called Polar Cruise Tourism. This is a list collected by Ross Klein, who runs a website called Cruise Junkie that some of you might know. It's not a complete list, but I think it's a list that shows what types of incidences are most common, and those show that sinking is actually not the most common cause of problem, fortunately, because that's a pretty serious casualty. Grounding is much more common, and but what we also can see from this list, this is a list that shows ships running aground near Arctic and Alaska waters, and it's pretty imminent from this list that there are particular areas that are more common for those incidents to happen, but it also is related to particular ships that are more, I guess, unlucky than others, and it also shows that those incidences are becoming more and more frequent with increased traffic. Now let's look at the next, where I've just limited it to a shorter period from 2003 to 2009, only in our neighborhood waters by Norway, Svalbard, and Greenland, and let's see what happened in those cases. Because what we can learn or make projections about in the future has to be based on what has already happened. And we can see here that the most common response or rescue operation involves evacuation. And it can involve actually quite a number of people involved. I've put into it total passengers, and this is not with crew included. There, of course, also in a way passengers that were included in those casualties or were affected in those casualties were a little bit less than 1,800, and you can see that the number in each of the casualties varies from 50 to 782. So the scale of the operations can vary quite significantly. most common itineraries around us on the northbound cruises from Iceland, they go to typically to Greenland or Svalbard, some even from Greenland to Nunavut. I'm not going to dwell on that, but for Iceland, as we saw from the rescue area that Iceland is responsible for in Snorri's presentation, incidents in Greenland are relevant to the rescue operations that we are responsible for. And just to give you an idea how relevant this is, in 2002, but also in 2005, we actually had casualties by east of Greenland. Snorri did not mention the Coast Guard to participate in that, and I don't know. But in both cases, this involved evacuations. Now, just in the neighborhood of Greenland, in Nunavut, in 2010, in August, clipper adventurer grounded on uncharted rock in Nunavut waters, and this also seems to be quite a common cause. Is that some of the areas the ships are cruising in have only been partially surveyed, and therefore the charts they're using are not completely reliable. And of course, some vessels are more unfortunate. Hanseatic and Clipper are, for instance, ships that have been quite unfortunate in northern waters. And I think for monitoring in the future, I think the focus should be on some particular vessels that have a story, and some areas where the frequency of casualties is more than in others. I just touched upon the environmental challenges being closely coupled with safety and rescue, and I really mean it. I think the environmental challenges are maybe the less noticeable threat, but it's there. And increased activities, they may result in uncontrolled environmental impact if our local authorities are unable to define and monitor what acceptable levels are of emission of substances, possible incidents of leakages, spills, water dumpings. And I think that one of the real challenges for Iceland is that we are not really we have not ratified some of the obligations in terms of environmental treaties like MARPOL and etc. So I think Gisli maybe he will touch more upon that in his presentation, how this is interlinked. Okay, what can we expect from this very short and short presentation? I think that instances with grounding and request for responses will be on the increase, and I'm very happy to hear how the Coast Guard and other associated institutions in Iceland are taking this matter seriously. I hope, but think it's unlikely that sinkings will be avoided, especially in the more or the larger ocean areas of the Arctic. This will require joint efforts, and so I'm hoping that even though the SAREX exercise in 2012 and 2013 was a very worthwhile effort, that we might have to extend the caliber of the training or exercises in order to simply learn about what surprises could occur during an effort like that. Then maybe one of the most likely casualties to happen, especially in terms of larger cruise ships, is major outbreaks of food poisoning. This could involve rescue operations in terms of evacuating passengers to hospital care. And I know that the police authorities and the people behind the establishment of the Research Coordination Center in Keflavík have given thoughts to this issue. One of the things they claim is that they have implemented a plan in place. They've mapped hospital beds in case of major outbreak or need for hospital care. I would, though, personally like to see on what premises they are mapped, because as we saw from the map from Snorri, if the hospital beds in Iceland will be filled, let's say we have a scenario like that, and then the next hospital is, according to his map, Bodø, which is far away if the outbreak happens in the exclusive zone of Iceland. So I think there are many strange challenges we can face. I think also maybe the coordination, the SAREX exercise at Ella Island in Greenland, that was very, I think, important. Maybe should take into consideration outbreaks like those I mentioned. Not only food poisoning, but could also be a flu outbreak or epidemic outbreak. Now, on the plans to establish research coordination centers in Keflavík, I think it's a step on the way, but from all what I've read so far, it's not enough to have one rescue coordination center for the North Atlantic. From all accounts, and now I'm actually referring to Michael Lowry, a master marine at Bremer, who has extensive experience from both the Antarctic and the Arctic. It's extremely important to have those coordination centers in each of the countries involved in the joint efforts. We are only in the midst of a shift where we only can see the contours of what the future shipborne traffic in the north will bring us. I'm going to quote Michael Lowry, who, again, it takes long to train an ice master as it does a brain surgeon. Maybe some of the ice experts can give us more detail on that. Thank you.
Thank you, Anna. We will move on and go to Gísli Viggósson, and Peter will help me with the technicalities here.